Hey guys, Nick Showman here. What we're going to talk about is how a conjugate system can be used and why it might not work for you. And that might be really interesting to some of you because a lot of you know that I use a conjugate system based on the West Side barbell method. As far as strength goes, I think the West Side method is hands down the best. But there's a lot of talk on why a conjugate system doesn't work. So I've looked at why these people don't think it works, and so we're going to talk about why they don't think it works and why I think it's not working for them, and it might not work for you if you're that kind of a lifter or that kind of a coach. And again, if you run a linear program or a block or whatever, it doesn't matter. I don't care. Get your clients stronger. I hope every lifter gets stronger. That's how the strength sports keep continuing. But these are just my observations, what I've noticed. So what we're going to talk about, what is a conjugate system? A lot of people think conjugate, they think West Side barbell, and then they think bands and chains. That's part of it, but it's a small part. Conjugate means a lot more than that, and I think it gets lost in translation, especially if you're learning from people who learn from reading online articles and such. If you want to learn about conjugate, I would highly recommend you reach out to people, whether it be Louie or Dave Tate or people who have spent their time at West Side Barbell. For me, it was meeting up with Josh Guttridge, Joe Bayless, Tim Harold, some of those guys, even Dave Hoff, talking to them about how to organize training. You will get so much more out of it than you will reading a book, because a book can't tell you different scenarios. But what conjugate method is, it's a constant rotation of exercises, intensity, and volume. That's a big thing because people think West Side doesn't have any planning, it doesn't have any periodization, when it actually does, and there's actually a system. And after we met with Boris Chico, even though we take two different paths, we end up in the same place. All right, Boris obviously has his plan that works great for his athletes, and Lou obviously has his plan that works great for his athletes. But when we laid out how we do our training cycles leading up to a competition, it was very similar, which was very interesting because people think they're two entirely different programs. But what we found was the last 3 weeks of the training cycle, it's almost identical. We just use different exercises to gauge our strength. And that's one thing, that's the first thing I'll talk about, why conjugate might not be working for you, is you don't know what exercises are testers and what are builders. And that can be some, I think, across the board are going to be the same for everybody. I think a max floor press, if you can get your floor press to go up, that probably means that your bench is going to go up. Again, there's always the exception. But generally speaking, everybody I've met so far, if they get a bigger floor press, they have a good meet and get a bigger bench. Another one, just a regular box squat, and I don't care if it's an equipped lifter or raw lifter. Generally speaking, if their box squat goes up, their competition squat will go up. And that's another big test exercise for us, is just a brief box squat in our briefs. Like Circa Max is also another big tester. We'll do that 21 days out from a meet, and that's with a blue and a green band on a straight bar in our briefs with our suit and straps down. No knee wraps because we're box squatting. But I think that's a big thing. I know what exercises for me, I know which ones will build my strength, and I know which ones will test my strength to let me know where I'm at in my training cycle. And again, there's guys we train with, those exercises are different. And those are the exercises. The testers are the ones I'm going to use as we get closer to a meet, and I need to know where I'm at in relative to my competition lifts. I don't like testing our competition lifts as you would in a meet, because we need to test things that will elicit a similar response, but it's a lot harder to recover from those competition lifts, and that's how you get hurt over long term, is doing the same thing over and over. That's why we're able to do max effort lifts every time we train. Every Monday and every Wednesday. Monday's our lower body max effort day. Wednesday's our max effort upper. We're able to pick a different exercise based on what we need as a lifter or what the group needs as a whole, and find exercises to build. Further away from a meet, like you'll find yourself a few times a year, maybe nobody in your whole training group has a meet lined up. That's when you can try different exercises, try different things, try different bars, different accommodating resistance, whatever it might be, different starting positions, whatever it might be. But as you get closer to a meet, that's when you need to really hone it in and know what exercises you need to progress on. For us, I'll just say it, 10 days out, we floor press for a 1 rep max. 21 days out, we will do our heaviest squat. That's the circa max I talked about earlier. Blue-green band with straps down. And then the following Monday is when we will do a elevated deadlift off 2.5-inch blocks. And I've done that in briefs, and I've also done it in a full suit. I think everything depends on the experience of a lifter. Obviously, the more advanced lifters, working at a higher percentage is going to tax their body more. 101% on an advanced lifter is a lot more than 101% on a beginner lifter. They don't have that established strength level yet. So just be cautious of that. We have some guys that they might just take an opening attempt on their last deadlift training session, and that's fine. It's just you have to play it by ear and see how people feel. The second reason a conjugate system might not work for you is simply that you might not know how to lay one out appropriately. You know, there's certain guidelines that I think everybody should follow when designing a training template for themselves or for others. And it's a lot harder, and you have to be a lot more cautious of things like people's work schedule, their recovery rate, if they're supplementing or not. You know, all these things play into the big picture. Everybody thinks that you just work out and then you go to a meet and compete, but that's not always the case. There's other external factors that you, and even as a distant coach, you can't control. So you have to program knowing your client's complete situation. But if you don't know how to lay out a template, it's a lot more difficult. And like I said earlier, if you want to try a conjugate style of training, I would highly recommend reaching out to somebody that has a lot of experience laying out a conjugate system. That way you don't have to worry about doing things like overtraining or even undertraining, which might be even worse. All right, because in either case, you're going to have diminishing results. So you need to be cautious of that. The third reason a conjugate system might not work for you is you're not honest with yourself. You say you do things that you need to do, but you don't do the exercises you truly need to do. I get a lot of messages, social media and emails and stuff, of people telling me that their squat is messed up because their upper back's weak or their hamstrings are weak, when it's usually the flip-flop. You know, people aren't honest with what they need to work on, and they keep doing the same thing, getting the same results. That's the beauty of the conjugate system. You know, we build our squat and our deadlift and even our bench by not doing a squat or a bench or a deadlift. We do things to build the weak areas, the weak muscle groups in those exercises. And that's crucial to keeping constant progress. And that's how, I mean, we hit PRs. It's very uncommon that we don't hit at least a 5-pound PR on something. But that's when we talk about hitting PRs, we're always cycling different max effort work. And that's the greatness of the conjugate system, because what's even more important than hitting a 5-pound PR is the psychological advantage you have going into a meet. If every max effort day you've hit a PR, even if it's 5 pounds, you've PR'd in a 10-week training cycle, you have 2 max effort days. So in 20 exercises, you hit 20 PRs. There's no reason, unless you have some sort of mental defect, when you get to a meet and you freak out, whatever, performance anxiety, but you should be on point to hit a good numbers in the meet where it really matters. Everything in training is just building for the next competition. We don't we always say it's nice to hit numbers in the gym, but really all that matters is what you do on the platform. That's sanctioned meets is where you get your numbers and they go towards the top 50 list, and that's how you get your elite total. You don't get your elite total in the gym. It has to be in a meet with judges and so forth.